Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. In this video, let us continue with our polity series and start Prime Minister. So Prime Minister of India, this is the first part. This will be important part of our general studies paper 2. It will be very helpful in prelims also because there are a lot of smaller points which we'll discuss in this particular video which will help us in opting very good options in the prelims because smaller details we might get confused. For example, what are the things which are constitutionally written, what are the things which are conventions which are followed, etc. So all those things we'll be discussing in this particular video. So previous to this we have already discussed vice president, which was discussed in 5 parts previously. It was in the previous month's edition of exam mastermind. So let us start with prime minister. The article with respect to prime minister which you have to remember is article number 75. Article number 75. Now what does article 75 say? That also we'll see, but just a heads up that you have to remember article number 75. Now there are two factual points which are usually asked in the examination. First one is who is the nominal executive? Who is the nominal executive? The nominal executive in case of India is president. Nominal executive is president. Then the next one is who is the real executive? Real executive. So the real executive here is prime minister. A real executive is prime minister. So nominal executive is president and the real executive is prime minister. Another important word for this is president, who is nominal executive. You can also call it as head of state. Head of state. Whereas prime minister, who is a real executive, they are called as head of government. Head of government. So these are some factual points which are very important for us to remember. First one is nominal executive is president, who is also known as head of state. Real executive is prime minister, who is also known as head of government. Now it is saying head of government. So government consists of prime minister itself with council of ministers. Prime minister with council of minister are the decision makers, usually are the executives, okay, are the decision makers. Now with this background, let us start with the appointment of prime minister. Very important. Now very important point with respect to appointment of prime minister which you have to remember is that the constitution doesn't say any specific procedure. There is no specific procedure for appointment of prime minister. Very important. So prime minister appointment, constitution doesn't say there is any procedure for the appointment of prime minister. Very important. Now in that case, the article 75 says that there shall be a prime minister. It says that the prime minister there shall be a prime minister who is appointed by president. Who is appointed by president. That is said in article 75. So the prime minister is appointed by president. Now on one side we are saying that the constitution doesn't say the procedure for the appointment of prime minister. On the other side the article is saying that there shall be this prime minister who is appointed by president. Now how does this work? Then the way the prime ministers are appointed or the way prime ministers are elected now, how does those things work? On all of those things we are dependent on conventions. All those things we are dependent on conventions of parliamentary form of government. Okay, so parliamentary system of government. On that convention itself we are appointing the prime minister. Now according to that convention, so the first important point for us to remember is that whoever is the leader of majority party is appointed as prime minister by president. I'll write president over here. Okay. So leader of majority party is elected as prime minister by president. Now, what is this majority party? Let's say there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say there are 5 parties. And out of all these parties, second party has received majority of seats. So the leader of this party, leader of second party, must be appointed as prime minister by president itself. So what is the first convention? It says that the leader of majority party in Lok Sabha is prime minister. But in one case, let's say 2 doesn't have majority. Let's say in that case 3 and 4 together is having majority. 3 and 4 together is having majority. So previously we saw that 2 is having majority. Now in the next scenario we are seeing that 2 is not having majority, 3 and 4 together is having majority. At that point of a time, usually the convention says that the president may exercise his personal discretion in selection of appointment of prime minister. Personal discretion. Or what happens is, whenever such a situation occurs wherein a coalition is having the majority, at that point of a time, the leader of the majority party of leader of coalition is appointed as prime minister, but they have to prove their confidence within a month. In this case, within 1 month they have to prove their confidence. Within 1 month itself they have to prove their confidence that they are actually having the majority. Now it is in this way that Charan Singh, the previous ex-prime minister Charan Singh, who was a coalition leader, had become prime minister when Janata Party government, which was headed by Morarji Desai, had fallen. So these are the 2 scenarios which we have seen already. Now there is another situation wherein the president can opt on their discretion, that is according to their choice, in case of death of prime minister. Now previous scenarios, or when that situation first time it occurred, at that point of a time, what did India decide, or what did the prime minister at that particular point of a time decide, that we will see. So when Jawaharlal Nehru was a prime minister, and when Jawaharlal Nehru passed away, at that point of a time, there was a temporary or an acting prime minister who was appointed by the president at that particular point of a time. That is, until the next prime minister, there has to be a caretaker prime minister or an acting prime minister. So at that point of a time, Gulzari Lal Nanda, they were appointed as a prime minister, because the convention at that point of a time was that the senior most minister will be prime minister. So on that convention only, at that particular point of a time, there was Gulzari Lal Nanda. They were appointed as prime minister because they were the senior most minister. And even after the death of Lal Bahadur Shastri, the same thing was followed, and the senior most minister was appointed as prime minister at that particular point of a time. Now we have already seen previously that constitution doesn't say any procedure for the appointment of prime minister. Now what happened is, after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, at that particular point of a time, the president was Zail Singh. They appointed Rajiv Gandhi as prime minister. they appointed Rajiv Gandhi as Prime Minister. Now, when they are appointed as Prime Minister, they have to prove their confidence also, correct? So, when the parliamentary party meeting was called of the Congress, they elected Rajiv Gandhi themselves as they elected Rajiv Gandhi only as the leader and hence the Prime Minister at that particular point of a time. Now, there was one very important judgment which came in 1980. This was by Delhi High Court. Now, what was this judgment which came in 1980 by Delhi High Court? It said that the president can appoint Prime Minister first. The president can appoint Prime Minister first, and then they can prove confidence. It is not needed to prove first and then be appointed as Prime Minister. So Delhi High Court held that the constitution doesn't require that a person must prove his majority in Lok Sabha before being appointed as a Prime Minister. So the president can appoint Prime Minister, and after that they can prove their majority in the Lok Sabha. On the same convention, Charan Singh, VP Singh, then PV Narasimha Rao, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, IK Gujral, so they all were appointed as Prime Minister in this way only. That is, the president appointed them as Prime Minister and later they had to prove their majority. Now, in 1997, Supreme Court, so this was first judgment. Second important was in 1997. At this point of a time, the Supreme Court's judgment had come into place. So, Supreme Court said that in order to be Prime Minister, you need not be member of Parliament. That is, you may not be member of Lok Sabha also, you may not be member of Rajya Sabha also. Such person can also be elected as Prime Minister. Such person also can be appointed as Prime Minister. However, one condition which it had said was that Supreme Court, which had held that the person who is not a member of either House of Parliament can be appointed as Prime Minister, but after appointment they will have 6 months time. And under this 6 months only, they have to become member of that particular house. They have to become member of Parliament. So you can also say that a person who is not even a member of Parliament can be Prime Minister for up to 6 months, because only after 6 months, if they have not even become MP, if they have not even appointed in the house, that too, it is not that they have to be in Lok Sabha only. They can be in Rajya Sabha also. They can be member of Lok Sabha also. They can be member of Rajya Sabha also. One of these houses they have to be a member of. If they become that member in 6 months, then they will be Prime Minister. They will continue to be Prime Minister. If not, they will cease to be the Prime Minister. Also, constitutionally, you can also say that the Prime Minister may be from Lok Sabha or from Rajya Sabha. But in case of Britain, the Prime Minister has to be from the lower house. What is the lower house there? It is House of Commons. Okay, so the Prime Minister in India may be member of any of the two houses. For example, 3 Prime Ministers, which is Indira Gandhi, Deve Gowda, Manmohan Singh, they were all members of Rajya Sabha. So in the first part, we discussed nominal executive, who is president, head of the state; real executive, prime minister, head of the government. In appointment of prime minister, we saw that the constitution doesn't say the procedure for the appointment of prime minister, and article 75 says that prime minister is appointed by president. So we saw that leader of majority party is usually, according to the convention, appointed as prime minister. In case of coalition, they can be appointed as prime minister, and within 1 month they can prove majority. And in case of death, previously the senior most minister was appointed as prime minister, but in 1980s, at that point of a time, after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi was appointed as prime minister, and later on they were unanimously appointed as a leader. They were accepted as a leader of Congress also. And then we saw two important judgments. One was in 1980 by Delhi High Court, which said that the president can appoint prime minister first. Later on, the prime minister can prove the majority. They can prove the majority. In 1997, it said that the prime minister can be elected by, they can be appointed by president for 6 months, and under that 6 months they have to become the member of house. They can be member of either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. If they do not become member of any of the two houses, then they'll cease to be prime minister. Then in Britain, we have seen that the person has to be from Lok Sabha only in order to be prime minister, whereas in case of India, you can be from either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. So this was the first part of prime minister. I hope you have understood everything in a little more detail, and we are going very slow, and we are trying to understand each and every important point in particular in the paragraphs, so that it is easier for us to remember also. Here you have to remember about the conventions which are being followed. In the next part, we'll continue with the oath, term and salary, and later on we'll continue with the prime minister completely. At the end of this e-paper, there are a few multiple choice questions for you to answer. You can attempt those. Thank you. I'll see you soon in the next video, which is part 2.